limit, signs. And it's not fair to the applicant, I think. And although I really like what you were saying, Commissioner Sprossy Burns, about it's not architectural feature if the next tenant would have to, take it down, it would be a sign. But at the same time, I don't think it's fair to have the applicant worry about what the next tenant might or might not do. These codes are for the applicants today, and it's not necessarily for an applicant that we have no idea about tomorrow. And so, although I totally agree with how you saw that as almost like a definition of what a sign would be versus an architectural element, I still don't think that it's fair for the applicant to have to worry about what the next tenant might do with the building. Vasa came in after Albertsons and they totally gutted it, and so that's just the cost that you have to assume when you're an after tenant. So at least from that point of view, it's not so much that I disagree with the idea of the architectural element versus sign, but it's that as far as the applicant is concerned, they're concerned with today, with the code today. So again, I don't know if continuance would be in the applicant's timeline, if that would work. Maybe it doesn't really matter right now because you're worried about concept plans, site plans, all the other stuff, and the final architecture detail could come later. But I do want more discussion because it's also not just this applicant; it's for the future and for all the other applicants and all the just looking at things like this. But again, I'm still favoring what the applicant is trying to do. I'm just not sure how to make it practical, in the long term for the city in terms of ordinance.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Kilgore. Well said. Commissioner Mangum, you were next.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to say that I think I'm in agreement with the chair. How I think it should be just fine to find a way to allow the one, but I'm very worried about allowing. I'm worried about how it can be abused if we go to 20% of the architectural features on the facade and 10% artwork, and so I'd like to know more about that. But I think what the intent of the applicant is perfectly fine. I just worry about how it can be abused.
Yeah.
That's all.
And really, it's hard to know until we get an application, right? I mean, our code is ever evolving. As you know, we have had multiple, look at the mixed waterfront, for example. We didn't know that we would run into the challenges that we did with that until we actually got an application. And that ended up us revamping the entire mixed waterfront zone in depth. And so we can't know until we actually get an application. Granted, the applicant can go through with a sign permit and get it if this were to pass. But what about the person next in line? Where is that going to go? I don't know. We try to foresee those types of things, but it's really impossible for us to, unless we look at examples here within the city, things that have come across our table before that we have denied because it didn't fit our sign code. It's really challenging to know what those instances are. And as planners, we try to look forward to those types of applications, but it's really hard to know how to answer that.
Okay, Commissioner Sprossy Burns.
Okay, so I agree with a lot of what y'all are saying, but to me, the one is still a sign. It's not an architectural feature, and so that's where I'm like, if you want to change the sign code, sure, come back. Let's have a discussion about that. But the way that it's currently written, I don't think that this is written correctly. And then, since everyone else stated it, I will just state I actually like it when everything looks the same. Maybe that makes me boring. I don't know. I doubt it though. But I live in the old part of Saratoga. I live in the Harvest Hills, one of the first neighborhoods that went in, and you can tell the houses that went in and then '08 happened and then the houses that went in. And even though all of the same architectural design is still the same there are some pretty big differences. And then when you go to areas that are really good at holding all of the same architectural design the same, you can tell. And I think those look nice. We haven't achieved that here in Saratoga like some other cities have, and I'm struggling to come up, like Park City does a better job than we do, right? They're not perfect at it, but it's a little bit better than we do. So I like those areas, and so yeah, if we want to talk about changing sign code, sure, but I don't think that what's being proposed is really meeting what, I don't think it's right I don't think it's where we need to be. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Sprosty Burns. I have just a quick follow-up question around that same. So if we go back to the packet and the what's being proposed under architectural feature, this is new proposed language?
Yes, it is. It is completely new.
And this has come from solely from the applicant, or has this come in consultation with the city?
Correct. No, it is, well, we've given them direction as far as what kinds of things need to be included in it. And then they've taken a definition they needed to include, and then something to direct the application of it. We can't just alone provide a definition and call it good. There has to be some meat to it in order for us to apply it.
So if we were to adopt what is here, and this resolves the concern around, in this case, the one, does this provide sufficient protection for the city to get us to avoid that lowest common denominator? Does that make sense?
I don't know.
City comfortable, anywhere comfortable, or if not, what would need to change here for the city to feel like, hey, maybe architectural features aren't such a bad idea because it allows us a little bit of leeway to welcome a Raising Cane's or someone else that might come up with a unique design, but also not let us look like,
Sure.
the city yard sale or whatever it may be.
Want to reduce the scale. 20% is very large. And I think that we would also want to avoid things like a giant panda climbing up the building, or things like, you know what I mean? Like what exactly is an architectural feature? I think we would want to tighten that definition if there's an inclination forward.
Yeah. Sarah, is there a way you can search up the West Jordan Raising Cane's to show that I believe it's West Jordan. It shows it differently. There is I believe it was, maybe it's,
So have we done
one,
actual
it would
math
give
that
you a
that
shot.
the one that you're proposing now would be 20% of the facade?
No, sorry. No, so with these kind of guidelines, we've made these with kind of other people in mind. So we've kind of made them a little bit more expansive to account for different businesses and what they might need as well. So this would be more than enough for the one. It would just be with other businesses in mind.
So help me visualize the examples that you put up. We don't need to go back to them, but the examples that you put up of those architectural elements of the one, how much of the facade percentage are those, do you know?
Of the one, I think that's about 12 to 13% of the facade. But I don't have that exact math in front of me.
Okay.
But
So
the
if
one
we
on
have
that is much less.
If we have a rough guesstimate of what you've seen, and I don't mean to put either of you on the spot, Gina or Sarah, this is where we could go for further discussion. Just looking at that one, our best guesstimate is it's 12 to 15%. Good or not? Too big, too small? And you don't have to go on
Yeah.
record. I'm just saying initial thoughts, like, does that accomplish what we're accomplishing versus?
I think it's
my
a happy
goodness,
medium.
Now we're gonna get that giant panda
Yeah.
on the side of the building.
Yeah, I think you're looking at a happier medium than doing a 20%. It also limits your other people's ability to go to that 20%. That 20% is significantly larger than what we allow for a sign. I think if you keep it within the neighborhood of our sign code and what we currently allow in that 8%, without classifying this as a sign, right? because that's what they're asking for, is to take that label on what this actually is. But then again, as to our conversation, mine and Ruland's conversation earlier, we will have to address the sign definition, because we include symbol and structure in our sign code, and that is considered a sign. And so number one is a symbol. It is symbolizing a brand that Raising Cane's has. So we would have to revamp our sign definition as well. And so you just have to keep those things in mind. It's a trickle effect. And that's one thing, when they first initially submitted their application, I evaluated it against our code. Where in our code does this affect? Because it's not just, one portion of the sign code. It is in multiple sections of the sign code. And so we just have to keep that in mind. You may want to remove primary color from that architectural feature to make it more subtle within the building. I mean, there's different things and different ways that you can go about doing it, but as far as a percentage, how will that affect things? You're more at a happy medium than you are going on the heavier side.
Yeah, good insight, thank you.
I do want to add some clarification on the Panda. So that was approved in 2016 under a different sign code. We revamped the whole code in 2017. So I don't know, I don't think the Panda would be allowed now.
So now we hate pandas.
I know. Did you want me to pull up the pink one or?
No, it must have been another one.
Pink one. Pull up the pink
Yeah, right.
one.
It must have been another one. It must not have been in Bell
Not West
or,
West Jordan?
yeah, it must not have been in West Jordan.
Which one?
Which one?
Jordan?
There's one in South Jordan that looks an awful lot like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's on 114 South. I may or may not have
okay,
been there a lot.
that might be right. Sorry, I looked at a lot of different variations.
on
I mean,
104.
across the country, there's ones that are in, Georgia and other places that, are there any in Georgia? I don't remember.
I don't have Georgia.
I don't, California maybe? We looked at a lot of, and that just proves the point that every jurisdiction has a different code. And, and that's what came to mind for me, is that, every jurisdiction has a different code, and so businesses are to mold according to that code. And if not, they have to request the change as they have. And so does it fit within our city? I think that's the biggest question. And how do you want it to fit into our city? Do you not want it as big? Do you not want it as the color? Do you want it to match the building more? There's so many different questions that you could ask to make it fit within Saratoga, if that's what you're leaning towards.
Is that the South Jordan one?
Yeah, that's the South Jordan one.
That's what I'm asking.
There's one that is actually
So, is it-
stuccoed into the wall, like it goes in that column, but it goes up and it's stucco. It's all stucco. I don't remember which one that is. Like I said, I looked at a lot of them, but it was actually built in as the building. It wasn't an applique, it wasn't something different. It was actually part of the building, and it came up over as a parapet, and it was the number one. It didn't come down to the bottom like, with that, but
Full image.
I've seen, there's those. I mean, there's so many different things that can be built into the building that Raising Cane's has actually done. And so, but it's across the country in order to meet other jurisdictions' sign code or code. Yes.
Yeah, in the stucco. So if we can ask the question of the applicant, then why not just bend but don't break and find a creative way?
There you go, that one.
Without going to the hot pink one that's in Midvale to make it work here in Saratoga Springs? I guess my question is, why have we just spent an hour? And I'm not meaning this in a rude way. I'm saying if this is a priority, you obviously want to do business. You want to come into Utah's fastest growing city. Capitalism is awesome. We want you here. Why not just make it work for here versus going through the hassle of what you're trying to propose?
Well, because it wouldn't have worked for here for the prototype of the building that we are proposing. So over the years, Raising Cane's continues to improve and develop their buildings more efficiently. One of our, biggest brags is that from the time you order to the time that you get, and this is not in the honeymoon period of the first month or so of a new location, but it's 2.5 minutes from the time you order to the time you get your food. So to answer your question, our prototype that we are planning to have build here in Saratoga Springs, we're not using the stucco building material, which the one did not conform. We still want to have our one. The prototypical one is made of recycled car hoods. So it's actually a metal
Like
material.
what, I'm sorry?
Car hoods.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, Oklahoma accent. So it is a metal one, is our prototypical, but we do want to work with you guys. And we want to find a way to make it work. So we would like to continue the discussion I don't know what the timeline would look like as far as,
Well, that's my next question for you is what is your timeline? Are the bulldozers parked outside ready to clear the ground, or what kind of potential timeframe are you working at so that we could try to be a good partner if we were to continue to, reasonably try to come to some sort of conclusion?
yeah, absolutely. We don't have our permits issued yet. Signs are one of the last thing that we apply for. And so we do have a little bit of time, that we could talk about this.
Is that 6 months, 3 months?
No, I would say we have 60 days.
Okay.
The one thing I did want to point out, if I may, part of the language would require approval from you guys for any architectural element. So that would be, for us, we thought that would be a way for you guys to say, no, we don't want that giant, panda or gorilla or whatever climbing over the building. You would have, just like our site plan, we had to bring it to you guys for approval. Just like the traffic flow and the queuing and all of that, this would fall in line with that, is what we're proposing.
Yeah, we appreciate that. And I think the danger for me in that is if we allow things to, and I'm not saying this is how you've worded it or not, I'd have to look at it closer, but if there's a discretionary element, if I go and eat orange chicken and it's bad that day and they come in and say, we want to put a panda on, I'm not going to let them put a panda on because it's bad. That's a stupid example. But as much as we can just get it to a principle, to the baseline versus, hey, we've got to decide on this or this, so we can avoid the future number one discussions, I guess would be the best thing for the city, the best thing for the commission. So I think that language is important. We would just have to make sure that we are removing those discretionary elements, because then we open the city up to, potential litigation and action.
Understood.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So not a bad idea. We would just have to make sure that it's done correctly. As much as we can our goal is always to eliminate those discretionary elements, because we will change out, these positions will change. We want to leave those principles for the next folks that come through and the next applicants that come through. So
Right.
you're a trailblazer. We appreciate your time and patience with this. This is good. This helps gets us all, we all get better. And I hope you realize that we're appreciative of your patience and the ability to work through this with the city. Again, I don't know if we have the best answer for you tonight, but maybe end it there. Oh, we've got some additional comments from the commissioner. So we'll go to Commissioner Mangum first.
I'll be real fast. I appreciate it. I have two questions. The first one, in the writing, it says the architectural features shall be constructed of the same materials and colors as the rest of the building. That's confusing, as the sign looked like it was its own material and color.
It is a different material.
What was that?
Yes, it is a different material from the building, but we do have the availability to make it the same material, but you're right, that wording is a little bit confusing.
The second is, I have a question. If hypothetically speaking, if we gave a go on this, would they then be allowed to do 20% architecture and 10% art?
No.
No, but 8% sign and 20% architectural feature.
Because in here, it gives
Yeah.
10% for the artwork and then 20% for the architecture.
They're wanting to strike any language related to artwork. That was information we received just yesterday.
Ah, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure we weren't trying to go too crazy. But I'd like to find a way to get this done for you.
I think if you choose to, you could also forward a recommendation for approval with conditions that it could move forward if you're inclined to go that way.
That's all. Thank you.
It is scheduled for the July 16th city council meeting, so if you condition it with approvals, maybe we can work with that.
Thanks. I think, yeah, one of those things, I do think 20% would be something that we could readily, change to come to more agreement upon, and getting the size and the scope of that one now and then realizing what but again, it's just a guesstimate, but I think that's something where we could back off a little bit as well if that's the route we choose. All right, Commissioner Kilgore.
Yeah, so that was my next question was, what can we do now so that we could move this, whether it's to continue or to move it forward? And if we are to move it forward, then what kind of conditions do we put on it? I mean, is it like we ask that the staff come back with more recommendations, or that you review? Because since this was written, since the amendments were written by the applicant and not staff, is it something that, as a condition, we say you go through it and make it more Saratoga Springs like, or is there something else that we should be, conditioning so that it's clear instructions for the staff?
I think you could focus on the concerns that you have. They have 20%. I think that's possibly a concern based on what you've voiced. They have language that would allow it on every single facade. I think that's probably a concern. Perhaps we would maybe only want to allow that on one side, one elevation. And then we would probably want to clean up the language regarding architectural features so that we eliminated some things that might be a little out there. So, and then you would probably delete any language related to artwork, because that's what the applicants propose.
To add one more condition, if you were to condition this, it would be to, that we would need to address the sign definition.
Oh, yeah, is it in here?
It is in not on the presentation, no. It's in the staff report. It's on the first page, it's not the first page.
Just because our definition of sign contradicts the definition of architectural feature, so we would need to, right? That's why, so we would need those to not contradict each other.
Thank you.
Okay, appreciative of the discussion this evening. Again, thank you for your time as well. We know that is valuable, and we appreciate you being able to spend a little bit of time with us as we work through this. I would be happy at this juncture to entertain a motion.
Okay, I'm going to give this a shot then. I don't know if you will.
Please, Commissioner Kilgore.
Okay, based upon the evidence and explanations received today, I move to recommend approval of the amendments to Title 19 with findings and conditions of the staff report, but with the additional conditions of, 1, deleting the artwork section. Is that the right way to say it? And then address also the sign definition and make it jive with the architectural features statements that are language that's proposed. And then also for the staff to consider what the appropriate size of the architectural feature for the facade, as since, just weigh the 20% and then see if there's a more appropriate size for the city. And then also consider that the architectural feature should be on one facade as opposed to what's proposed in the language.
Yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to that.
That's good.
Could we add something to that about, not sure the correct verbiage here, but something, we're talking about not 20%, but 20% plus 8% for the sign, and just having some kind of balance between architectural features and signage.
Yeah, then when the staff considers that 20% number, that it considers the fact that we have an 8% sign ordinance and that it's a proper balance, it strikes a proper balance on the building.
That was an unofficial way to amend your motion, which is excellent.
Well, can I ask a question? It seems like a continuance would make better sense in this situation. We're basically saying we're going to table this for now, but we're approving it.
Well, that's the motion.
Hold on, we got to keep it together here because we have a motion on the table. So what we would need to do now is call for a second of this motion. If we receive a second, then we would have a vote. If there's no second, the motion will die, and then we could move to an additional motion.
Okay.
Commissioner Wilden. So we have a motion on the table with the additional conditions as proposed by Commissioner Kilgore. Do we have a second? All right, hearing no second, that motion will fail, and now I'd be happy to entertain a different motion.
I'll make a motion that we table this discussion and return to it once staff has had a chance to go over the things that have been discussed in tonight's meeting.
Is that given with enough specificity? You feel comfortable? Applicant, are you okay with that, to be able to continue to visit with the staff? Okay. So I have a motion for continuance. Do we have a second?
I'll
Second.
Multiple seconds. We'll give it to Commissioner Wilden since he raised all the trouble on the first motion.
Wow.
Commissioner Wilden has the second. Do we have any additional discussion on this matter? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion will pass unanimously. Thank you all for the great discussion this evening.
Thank you.
Okay. Feel like we had our own little part in the presidential debate this evening, going over the important matters of community business. Actually, this matters more. All right, we'll move on to item number 3 under the public hearing. This is the Israel Canyon Church and Residential Development rezone from agricultural to R110 and accompanying concept plan located approximately at Grandview Boulevard and Redwood Road. Mike Davey as the applicant. That is correct. Oh, sorry, get you the right button there. There you go. Oh, don't touch it after I touch it.
Yes, sir.
All right, there we go.
Good evening, Commission. As stated, this is a request for a rezone. The applicant is here this evening. If you'd like to come sit up here, that would be great. This is located at just southwest of the intersection of Grandview Boulevard and Redwood Road, and does include an accompanying concept plan with this proposal. So the property you can see here on this location map, it's approximately 7.6 acres in size. They are proposing a zoning change to the R110, which is a single-family residential zoning district that requires a minimum of 10,000 square foot lots. The current zoning as it is agricultural. The general plan does support this. Currently, the general plan pegs this as low-density residential, and that's what envisions for this area. And so the proposal is consistent with our general plan. Here's the accompanying concept plan showing that church, which would front onto Redwood Road there, and then the back half of it would come as a second phase to be done by a different developer as the residential development. So that's what I have for you here this evening. Our applicant is with us if you have any questions for him. I'm present for any questions as well. And then this is a public hearing, and staff did not hear from any citizens regarding this request to this point. So,
Excellent. Thank you for making note of that for us. Would the applicant like to add anything to the presentation this?
David did a great job. I'm here for questions, but I don't have anything to add.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate that. As noted, this is an item of public hearing, so we'll go ahead and open that up for any members of the public present this evening that would like to comment on this agenda item. Seeing and hearing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment at this time and open it up for questions and comments from members of the. Commissioner Kilgore.
There were a couple, let's see, on 19.01.04 under purpose, that was up for discussion. I was wondering what the topic of the discussion would be.
That may have been an error in the staff report. With this particular items, we did not have anything that was up for discussion, so I apologize if that's the case.
Okay. And just to make sure, I just found the paragraph. It says, in balancing the interests of the petitioner with the interests of the public, community interests will be better served by making the proposed change. And it was up for discussion. So you say that was probably an error?
Yeah.
Okay.
I apologize.
No problem. And then, is there going to be, I can't tell, any exit or entrance onto Redwood Road from this property?
No, there will not.
Okay. That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Kilgore, do any other members of the commission have questions or comments? Hearing none, we wore ourselves out on the previous discussion. I just have a quick question. So there's a couple things going on here. We're looking for the rezone, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And then on the packet and the materials itself, it's all can complies at this juncture.
Correct, and that's typical with a concept plan like this. When the applicant comes back with their site plan, they'll be able to
We'll help
address.
to be able to resolve those at that
Yes.
time. Okay. That sounds good. That was my only question. So I'd be happy to entertain a motion at this time.
I'll move that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation for approval of the requested rezone for the Israel Canyon Church and residential development located at the southwest corner of the intersection of Grandview Boulevard and Redwood Road with findings and conditions that are included in the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a second from Commissioner Mann. Any additional discussion on the matter? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Thanks for the good presentation.
Thank you, commissioners.
All right, do we need a break or is everyone doing okay? All right. Commissioner Sprosty Burns. Moving us forward. We're on to item number 4, amendments to Title 19, Land Development Code, Chapter 1904.14, Gateway Overlay, citywide, city initiated.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Staff has been looking at how we can improve the aesthetics in our gateway areas for quite some time, trying to find that right balance of, what's an overburden for city staff to enforce, but maybe what's an overburden for the property owners to take on to, make it aesthetically pleasing, and to provide that right balance of specificity and flexibility too. So what is strucken out is what we propose to be deleted, and then what's underlined we propose to be additions. So for landscaping, we just want to have some more measurable, criteria. It's kind of the typical de facto where applicants, go for the lowest common denominator. They just want to put more landscaping in instead of maybe some other architectural features such as a bench or a drinking fountain or a trash receptacle or some seating for sidewalks. And then we propose kind of a point system that we can more readily define if it meets the code and it's less subjective. And we're proposing that it be, have a choice of, like 8 elements, not too many, but not too few, hopefully, and trying to find the right balance of weighting each element so we can, receive what we're after, and ultimately is just a little enhanced presentation as people enter the city. And so this kind of gives an example of a lot right over here at Still Ridge Plaza, how the proposed point system could work. And then we just have some pictures of some examples of elements that could be used in our gateway overlay zone. Planter boxes, receptacles, outdoor restaurant seating, ornamental trees, benches, bike racks, gas fire pits, and drinking fountains. And just like to add, sometimes it's a little bit striking how expensive some of these items are. So they might seem to be rather minor, but they are rather costly, or they can be. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions you might have. And again, this is a public hearing. We haven't received any comments from residents to this point.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Appreciate the presentation this evening. Thank you for noting as well it's a matter of public hearing. Having received none, we'll open it for public hearing for any present members of the public this evening that would like to make comment. Seeing and hearing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment and open this up for questions and comments from the commissioners. And Commissioner Hill, you are first.
Thank you, Kent, for the completeness of the materials. As I look at the elements that you have brought before us, I think it's so critical that we have this in place before we start on our downtown. I know we have the master plan, but that's going to be the place that sets the tone, I think, for having these images, the gateway overlay. And so I'm very positively thinking that this needs to be in place as we're starting to create our downtown area, and then we can incorporate those into the other areas that have gathering places, maybe some in our parks, so that we have this uniform approach that you are in Saratoga Springs. Thank you.
Yes, it's kind of a branding, if you will, and just to clarify
Absolutely.
that.
We were talking about branding in the first one. Well, we need to brand ourselves as a city too.
So this is the gateway overlay, and the downtown will have its separate, elements, but hopefully there'll be some similarities.
Yeah, I would really hope that we would see similarities so that it's kind of like wayfinding a little bit, where you're at. Thank you.
Ken, did you want to respond to the particular?
To clarify again, this item you have before you tonight will not impact or affect the downtown, other than perhaps setting an example as we move forward with our downtown plans. We would expect that downtown will have its own community and village plans that we will look at these elements.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. Anything else, Commissioner Hill?
No, that would do it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Mangum, you are next.
Thank you so much. A quick question I had on, it says page 6 at item number 8 regarding the entrance feature. I was confused when it says each entrance feature shall, and then B says be a minimum size 10 feet high, 4 feet wide. What is it we're trying to accomplish there? What exactly are we wanting to be 10 feet high, 4 feet wide?
I guess a insignia or logo, maybe a picture of a blue heron that's kind of the emblem for the Saratoga Springs.
So it's not the city logo, but it's just anything else that's any type of feature.
Right. There'd be ultimately need to be approved by the city council, but that again, we're trying to find some leeway or flexibility.
Something nice to look at, basically. Gotcha.
Yeah, maybe you'll see in some cities or jurisdictions where they actually have kind of a logo for the city and say, now entering, this jurisdiction.
Any other questions, Commissioner Mangum, or comments? Are you good, Commissioner Mangum?
Thank you.
I was fumbling there. It was my fault.
Well, just a clarification, number A, or letter A, include the official city logo. So, that be a minimum of size of 6 square feet. So that be part of, the minimum size, the overall size of the entrance feature, being 10 feet high and 4 feet wide.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Commissioner Kilgore.
So the applicants, or the property owners, rather, they're expected to maintain and pay the cost for these things, right? So like signs, if someone sprayed graffiti paint, they are responsible for having to clean it up and just maintain it. Is that right?
That's how it's being proposed, yes.
Okay, and then this kind of gateway overlay, is that common in other cities in Utah County, or who else has done that, and what does it look like, if so?
That's a good question. I've done a little bit of research, and then I live in St. George, and so I've done some research there. They have their own particular entryway, and in that jurisdiction, they buy a little bit of the property, and they have a prototype. The city actually puts it up and maintains it. That's how they do it in that jurisdiction.
Okay, yeah, because if it's not that common, I wonder if we're going to get any kind of a pushback from property owners saying that, so we have to maintain this in perpetuity just because we happen to be in that location. And if there was no gateway overlay when they bought the property, I just wonder how they would react to some kind of those additional costs that we're burdening them with, especially if it's not common practice in Utah County.
Yeah.
Just wondering if you have any insight into that.
So one of the Utah County towns that we looked at was Provo. I believe, Kent, we did look at what they had on theirs. They have established a gateway district for their gateway areas, which has been in place for a while, but they've got some different types of gateway areas. Some of these things take time, especially when you're in a already developed area. So to make any real impact, it takes time. But this was not just something that we came up with on a staff level, but it was actually something that had its embryo a long time ago when the city was just young, and they were looking at applying a gateway on what we now consider the Crossroads Redwood Road gateway area, but is no longer our gateway. But it was something an idea that carried over, and City Council asked us to look at that. And of course, we have already created the gateway district areas. They are now applied. It is a zoning designation. There are some guidelines in place. We're just trying to beef that up a little bit because we are starting to see some of those develop. But we just, again, not wanting to look just like anybody else or have our gateways not be attractive. This was the concept.
Okay.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah, no, I like the idea. It's just that we want the city to look a certain way, be a certain way, which is terrific. But it seems like it's in the wall of the developer or the property owner. So that's where I just wonder I hope that goes well, or no one has an issue with it. But I just wonder if I like the fact that I don't know if we're pioneers, but if we're doing something new, but at the same time, I just wonder how the reception will be with the property owners, especially if they do put it in a bench and then they have to fix it, or just maintain it, or a sign that gets that gets vandalized and then they have to again fix it.
Yeah, we would hope that the property owners would see this as advantageous, a benefit for their property.
Yeah, I hope so too. Yeah. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Kilgore. Any additional questions or comments from members of the commission? I have a couple of questions for myself. So I love the idea, like as we were initially presented with these overlay districts, being able to work through what those look like and how we go about doing them. As Ken, as you mentioned, those are in place. We're trying now to strengthen. So we have some development already in some of these gateways. How do we maintain some of the words that you used, Kent, earlier, about sort of that uniform appearance or being able to add these elements in, like, are we going to hold those folks that may already be in place in some of these gateway overlays? Does the city take care of that to give us that feel and that's the aesthetic that we want, in addition to those that will now be responsible to come in and to do that? Does that make sense? We already have a few folks here and there in some of these overlays as we're coming in to the city. So we won't have anything there because we can't go back and retroactively enforce something here that we're changing on them. So will the city then go back and make it look good? Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
I think so. We haven't discussed, the city going back to maybe beef up what's previously been approved.
Yeah, so I guess my point is, like, if something's already there, like, is the Sherwin-Williams, Ken, is that in the gateway overlay for, I just want to use an example? Or the bank, the Central Utah Bank?
Yes, they are currently in, and Kent, there's something that, I don't know if you saw the recent email I sent just before this meeting.
Oh, I didn't.
Our map is not correct.
Oh,
That area was included in the gateway area, so we need to make that correction on.
okay.
So anyway, sorry,
Yeah.
I'm taking care of some administrative.
No problem, that's great.
But yes, it is. Unfortunately, there were a few examples of development occurring before we put these gateway applications in place. However, there's only a small handful of those throughout the city, and our impact much larger when all of these gateway areas develop. And so there will be maybe just a handful that won't be in full compliance, and if it stands out to be a sore thumb, then I would think that maybe the city will step in. Right now, the city has already made a preliminary design for to be a part of the Steel Ridge development that's just to the east of us here, where the car wash is going in, but on the very corner there, that there will be I believe it's a water fountain with a signage, city welcome to Saratoga Springs. So there may be more of that, but at least we've identified one location where the city will actually step up and do these type of things in the gateway area.
Okay. Yeah, I think, obviously we don't know what it will be or what it will look like, but just to kind of ping it on our radar screen, I could see that being a potential, just something that would visually, look different. And then also just for the continuity's sake and things that what we're proposing here, which all looks great. I think the other thing, and Commissioner Kilgore raised this, and I'm not quite sure what we do, but if I'm the business owner and I have this fancy trash can or bench outside of my place and it gets completely trashed or there's gum stuck all over it, I mean, other than I'm a good Samaritan, what incentive do I have to go out there and clean it up and to make it look nice again, or to upkeep it, like if we're talking like a fire pit or the bike rack or the city bench? I think in the ideal world, we think they would go out there and do that, but I'm an optimist by nature, but I'm being a little pessimistic here. Like I see it in other places if that upkeep is a continual challenge. And so what incentive, and by incentive, I mean you could also have a stick, right, at some point. But what incentive do you have to say this will be upkept to standard X?
To my knowledge, we just have our current code compliance program.
So is there enforcement elements within that code compliance that we could go and say, this is an important element of our overlay district, and as a business owner in this overlay, you agreed to upkeep this and you are not, and therefore there is a fine? Something to nudge the action versus eloquently spoken by Commissioner Kilgore, the hope that they would do that, because
We
I'm a
haven't
pessimist.
proposed any, maintenance language for this gateway over, just other than our general code compliance for any properties.
So is that strong enough to keep it, we want it to look good, like we don't want to invest all this and then, have it go to the proverbial.
Yeah, but so you make a good point that sometime down the road, we may have some problems with some of these upkeep. As Kent pointed out, no, we don't have anything in our co-compliance program that goes around to make sure all of our businesses, especially our gateway areas, are maintaining their look the way we want it to. I would imagine that's something that we will want to address, especially if we start seeing a problem, but perhaps being a little proactive on that would be good. So that's a good point. I think if there was something that was definitely trashy looking or something, then that's something that our code compliance could attack at this point.
Yeah, and I don't mean to create a police state by any means, right? But also, like, we don't want to just be self-defeating. We don't want to invest or require others to invest all of this to make our city what we hope to achieve with these overlay districts, and then just have it not be that at some point. So whatever it is, that's another thing I just feel we need to put on the radar screen, and what we're getting ourselves into with this, and what we hope that those business owners would be willing to comply with moving forward from a upkeep and standard position. So I hope that makes sense, but that's just one concern that I have.
It does.
All right. Any other questions or comments from members of the commission? Otherwise, I would be happy to entertain a motion.
I move that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval for the proposed code amendment to Title 19.04.14 Gateway Overlay with the findings and conditions in the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner Esprosti Burns. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Commissioner Kilgore. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any additional discussion on the matter? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Thanks, Ken. And thank you, Ken, for the comments as well. All right, we'll move on to item number 5 under the public hearing. This is amendments to Title 19 Land Development Code, Chapter 191105, Lighting Standards and Design Requirements, citywide, city initiated.
Thank you. Just to reiterate, these code amendments like the Gateway Overlay, it's been a real joint effort with Sarah and Ken and Austin. So we've combined and talked a number of times. And so we appreciate your input. This is an area of our code that we've seen that we could probably improve. We have a current standard for how much light trespass can go onto a residential property line, but we haven't had one per commercial. If there's 2 commercial properties that are joining each other, what's the standard that we should use? So we've tried to find that balance again, propose some language that's reasonable for improving this code, that the trespass lighting shall not exceed 5 feet. And of course, the obvious question was 5-foot candles. And so the question is, well, how light or how bright is 5-foot candles? So I believe in our packet, there's some comparisons of how bright a foot candle is, or 5-foot candles. A foot candle is how bright one candle is 1 foot away from a 1 square foot area. So there's, recommendations in there that, a parking lot be so many foot candles, and they vary somewhat from one jurisdiction to another, and particularly if it's a dark sky compliant community. Again, this is a public hearing too, and we haven't received any public comments at this point.
All right, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. Thanks for noting as well, this is a matter of public hearing. Having received no public hearing, we'll open it up for public hearing here at this meeting. If there's any members of the public that would like to make a comment at this time, you may do so. Hearing none, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing on this at this time and open it up to questions and comments from members of the commission. Commissioner Kilgore.
So you brought it up. I was going to ask, does this, so you took our dark sky ordinances in consideration when writing the code. Is that right?
Yeah, we don't have a dark sky ordinance.
Oh, I thought we did. I'm sorry.
Our lighting code it's the same. It's not called a dark sky ordinance, but our lighting code, it does address all of the elements of the dark sky requests from Camp Williams.
Okay. Yeah, that's what it was. It's the Camp Williams request. So,
yeah.
Okay, so it does take into account that.
Some of those same principles, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Kilgore. Do we have any other additional questions or comments from members of the commission? Otherwise, I'd be happy to entertain a motion.
I move that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation for approval of the requested code amendment to Title 19.11.05 non-residential lighting with the findings and conditions in the staff report.
Thanks, Commissioner Sprossy Burns. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any additional comments on the matter? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you all. We will move to first item under business, the Saratoga Town Center Lot 308, site plan located at 1457 North Commerce Road. Josh Mofat, hopefully I got that correct, as applicant.
All right, so this is a site plan for a commercial lot in Saratoga Town Center across over here, just located northwest of the intersection of Crossroads and Commerce. The current zoning on the property is regional commercial, and our applicant is Josh Moffett, who's here this evening. So here's the site plan for your reference. With regard to site layout, it does comply with all of our requirements in our code. Parking, lighting, it completely complies with those as proposed. Landscaping, there was a mistake in your packets. I included a previous version of the landscaping that was sent out earlier today. The updated copy, that is the correct one and is shown here. The landscaping as proposed does comply with our ordinance and regulations. There is one item that is up for discussion this evening. Since you haven't talked about architecture enough this evening, we'll add this to the list. Staff is looking for input from the commission and later on from the council regarding the architectural color palette that's being proposed for this building. Currently, the applicant is proposing various shades of gray on the building and utilizing a charcoal brick. When speaking with the applicant, we asked for them to come back with an alternative. Their proposal was a dark red brick. And I have examples here of what each of those will look like that were provided by the applicant, or at least give a good idea of what they're going to look like. And then something else that I wanted to do was kind of show you a color inventory of the buildings in that area so that you have that for consideration as well. So here's that first alternative, what the applicant is proposing, utilizing that charcoal brick. The concern mainly stemmed from the renderings and how they present those color options, and so wanted to pull something and get something from the applicant that would truly represent what those colors will look like on the building. So on the left there, you can see the material board that will be utilized with this building to get a better idea of what that stone, what that stucco, and what that brick will look like. That stone and that stucco will stay the same for the second alternative. This is a representative example of what that brick, the dark red brick, might look like when utilized on those renderings. Again, the renderings I didn't feel like fully represented the colors of the building, and so wanted